The Babe and I by David A. Adler. Illustrated by Terry Widener. For my birthday, I was hoping my parents would give me a bicycle. They only gave me a dime. I was disappointed, but not surprised. It was 1932, in the midst of the Great Depression, and millions of people were out of work. We were lucky. My father had a job, but we never seemed to have much money. Where we lived, in the Bronx, New York, everyone was poor. So what gift did he want? He wanted a bicycle. A bicycle. However, what gift did he get? And how did it make him feel? He got a dime, and he felt disappointed. When and where is the story set? It is set in 1932, during the Great Depression in the Bronx, New York. Why did no one have a job? No one had a job because it was the Great Depression. The Great Depression was a time when millions of people were out of work. "Happy birthday, Dad," said. When I walked him outside, I watched him go off, carrying his briefcase and smiling. My neighbor Jacob was tossing a ball and catching it. He threw it to me and shouted, "Give me a high one." I'm Babe Ruth, the world's greatest baseball player. I threw the ball and Jacob reached up. It bounced out of his hands. He was no Babe Ruth. We played for a while, and then Jacob said, "I have to go to work. Come with me. We can catch a ball while we talk." A few blocks from home, we passed a woman selling apples. Her clothes were wrinkled and shabby. I gave her my birthday dime and bought 2 apples, one for me and one for Jacob. I was glad to be rid of the dime. It reminded me of the present I didn't get. We turned onto Webster Avenue, and there were more apple sellers. Near the next corner, I saw a large briefcase. I looked up, and there was my dad, selling apples like the others. Suddenly, I couldn't move. "Come on," Jacob said. I pointed. "Oh," he whispered. "I thought your dad had a job." "So did I. And Mom thinks so too." So, how did the boy use his dime? Yes, he bought apples from a woman in wrinkled and shabby clothes. He bought 2 apples, one for Jacob and one for himself. Why was the woman's clothes shabby and wrinkled? Maybe it was because she did not have a nice job, so she was poor. And where was the boy's dad's selling apples? He was selling apples on Webster Avenue. Okay? There were tears in my eyes as I watched people walk past my father. I wish so much someone would buy an apple from him. But no one did. I realized how he had earned my birthday dime and was sorry I had spent it. So, how did the boy feel when he saw his dad selling apples? He had tears in his eyes. He was sad. I have to get to work, Jacob whispered. I was too dazed to know where we were going. I just followed Jacob until we came to a small building. My dad is out of work too, Jacob said as he got in line. That's why I'm a newsie. Sell newspapers with me. It's fun. I didn't feel like going home, so I stayed with Jacob. We collected our papers, and he said, "Now I'll teach you how to really sell." So, what did Jacob and the little boy do to earn money? That's right, they sold newspapers. They sold newspapers. We walked past a newsie on the corner. "Coney Island fire," he called out. 1,000 homeless, read all about it. There were lots of people around, but I didn't see anyone buy a newspaper. Jacob and I passed other newsies calling out about the fire. Then we walked around beyond the busy streets and apartment buildings. "Where are we going?" I asked. "You'll see," Jacob said. We walked until we came to an elevated train station. People were rushing from it to the large ballpark just ahead. "We're here," Jacob said. "That's Yankee Stadium." I held up one of my newspapers and called out the headline. "Coney Island fire, read all about it." "No," Jacob said. "No one here is interested in fires." He picked up a newspaper and looked through it. "Here it is," he said. "This is what they want." "Babe Ruth hits a home run," he called out. "Read all about it. The Babe hits number 25. Read all about it." So, where did the boys go? Yes, they went to the large ballpark named Yankee Stadium. So they went to Yankee Stadium. And why did Jacob think saying Babe Ruth hits a home run would make more people buy newspapers? It's because no one is interested in fires. They're more interested in Babe Ruth and sports. Good job. "Here, I'll take one," a man said, and gave Jacob 2 cents. "Let me see that," another man said. Jacob was smart. These people were on their way to see a Yankee game. Of course they were interested in Babe Ruth. "Babe Ruth hits home run," I called out. "Read all about it." Jacob and I quickly sold all the newspapers. When we left the stadium, the coins in my pocket made a nice jingle. So again, why did Jacob think that people would want to buy newspapers by saying Babe Ruth hits a home run? It's because the people were on their way to see a Yankee game. And so they would of course want to read about Babe Ruth. And that's how they sold all their papers. We went back to the small building and paid a penny for each paper we had sold. That left me with 25 cents. When I got home, I didn't tell my mom about Dad and the apples, but I told her about my job. She put the coins I earned in our money jar and said, "Don't say anything to your father about the newspapers. It might embarrass him to know you're helping out." Later, Dad came home and put some coins in the jar. He took off his shoes, stretched out on the couch, and said, "I was really busy today at the office. I'm tired." I wanted to tell him he didn't have to pretend anymore, that he still had a job, but I couldn't. I just looked at Dad's briefcase and wondered what he had in there. So where did the father say he was working? Yes, in the office. So the father pretended to work at the office. Good job. The next day, Jacob and I called out about Babe Ruth again. He had hit his 26th home run. I quickly sold my newspapers. I knew I could have sold more if only I had some way to get them to the stadium. So again, how did they sell all their newspapers? They sold them by mentioning Babe Ruth again. Okay? And so they were able to sell out all of their newspapers. When I got home, I searched the basement of our building for a wagon or anything with wheels. All I found were boxes and torn suitcases. Just before I went back upstairs, I saw Miss Johnson pushing her baby in a carriage. "Could I borrow that?" I asked. "Why?" she said. "You don't have a baby." I told her about the newspapers. "I suppose so," Miss Johnson said, thinking. "But this would have to be a business arrangement. With my carriage, you'll make extra money, so I should make some too." She offered to rent the carriage to me for 10 cents an afternoon, and I agreed. So what was the boy's idea to sell more newspapers? Yes, he would use Mrs. Johnson's carriage, her baby carriage, to carry more newspapers. He would borrow Mrs. Johnson's carriage to carry more newspapers. Good job. On Monday, the front page story was about a 9-year-old boy who had robbed a telegraph office because he wanted to be arrested. He knew he would get something to eat in jail. Jacob and I didn't call out about the boy. We called out about Babe Ruth. He had won a game for the Yankees with a hit in the 12th inning. Thanks to Mrs. Johnson's carriage, I sold lots of newspapers. I had 80 cents to give Mom for the money jar. So what deal did he and Miss Johnson make? He promised Miss Johnson to give 10 cents per afternoon to rent her carriage. He needed the baby carriage so he could carry more newspapers. When Dad came home, he gave Mom a bottle of milk and a bag of apples and said, "I bought the apples from an unemployed man I passed on my way home." "Dad," I said, "that man is not unemployed. Selling apples is a job." "No, it's not," he said sharply. It's just what you do while you wait and hope for something better. He looked upset, and I realized how important it was for him to keep his secret. So how much did the boy earn that day? The boy earned 80 cents. And how much did he earn? And how did he earn that much? He earned that much because he had Mrs. Johnson's carriage, which could hold lots of newspapers. And so he sold lots of papers. Okay? On this page, how did the boy and his dad differ about selling newspapers? So the boy thought selling apples was a job, but the dad only thought it was something to do while you wait and hope for something better. So the boy thought it was a job, but the dad did not. And so why was the dad upset? He was mad because he did not have a job, and he was embarrassed to sell apples. So he wanted to keep his secret. On Tuesday, Jacob and I called out, "Babe Ruth collapses, read all about it." And on Wednesday, Babe Ruth stays home. He had hurt his leg, and doctors told him he wouldn't be able to play for 3 weeks. That night, Dad asked me to walk with him. When we were a few blocks from home, he said, "Today I saw you pushing Miss Johnson's baby carriage. I spoke with her, and she told me about the newspapers." "I'm just trying to help, Dad." He said, "I know." So what happened to Babe Ruth? Yes, Babe Ruth hurt his leg, so he had to stay home. And what did Dad ask the boy? He asked the boy if he was ever, why he was pushing Mrs. Johnson's baby carriage. And the dad found out about the selling of newspapers. Dad held my hand firmly. We walked quietly for a while. Then Dad asked, "Were you ever on Webster Avenue?" "Once," the boy said. He squeezed my hand. Tears were in his eyes and rolling down his cheeks. "I didn't tell Mom," I said. Dad didn't say anything after that. I didn't either. We just walked. So what did Dad do on Webster Avenue? Remember, Dad sold apples on Webster Avenue. Okay? And so why was Dad sad? Why did he cry? It's because he was embarrassed that he had lost his job. The next day, Jacob and I called out, "Babe Ruth sits with fans, read all about it." "Here, kid, I'll take one." A tall man gave me a $5 bill. "I'm sorry," I told him. "I can't change that." "That's okay, kid. Keep the change." I just looked at the money. I couldn't believe anyone would pay that much for a newspaper. Jacob ran to me. "Do you know who that was?" he asked. "You sold a paper to Babe Ruth." So, who bought the boy's newspaper. Yes, Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth bought the newspaper. How much did Babe Ruth pay for the newspaper? He paid $5. That is about 5,000 won. So Babe Ruth paid a $5 bill for the newspaper. In the few pictures I had seen of Babe Ruth, he was wearing his baseball uniform. I didn't recognize him without it. Wow, I said, I just sold a newspaper to Babe Ruth. I kept one hand in my pocket, holding on to my Babe Ruth bill. With my other hand, I sold newspapers, and I kept looking across the street toward where Babe Ruth had gone. When all our papers were sold, I pointed to Yankee Stadium and told Jacob, I'm going over there. I needed to see Babe Ruth again. So, why wouldn't the boy recognize Babe Ruth? He didn't recognize Babe Ruth because he wasn't wearing his uniform. So the boy did not recognize him without his baseball uniform. And where was Babe Ruth going? Babe Ruth was going across the street. I checked the prices and realized I could buy 2 tickets and still have plenty left for the money jar. So that's what I did. The stadium was noisy. Jacob and I walked through the short tunnel and saw a large baseball field. Babe Ruth was in the Yankee dugout with his teammates. When the game started, he stayed there. I guess his leg still hurt. So Babe Ruth went to the baseball stadium. He went to the Yankee dugout. The boys went to go see Babe Ruth. I tried to watch everything. The pitcher, the catcher, the batter, the players on the field, and Babe Ruth. Near the end of the game, with the score tied, the Yankee catcher didn't come up to bat. Out came Babe Ruth. Everyone shouted and waved. I think I cheered the loudest. He paid for my tickets, I told the man next to me. He gave me $5 so I could see the game. The man smiled. I think the Red Sox pitcher was afraid Babe Ruth would hit a home run. He purposely threw wide of the plate 4 times and walked the Babe. We cheered again as Babe Ruth slowly walked to first base. We knew he couldn't hit a home run every time, but at least the Babe was back. Babe Ruth was part of the 1932 Yankees. That year, they were the best team in baseball. He and I were a team too. His home runs helped me sell newspapers. And I left Yankee Stadium with the coins I had earned, making that nice jiggling sound in my pocket. I knew Dad and I were also a team. We were both working to get our family through hard times. So why did the boy think he and Babe were a team? That's because Babe Ruth's home runs helped the boy sell newspapers. So Babe Ruth hit home runs and the boy sold more newspapers because of that. So the boy and Babe Ruth were on the same team. But why did the boy think his dad and him were on the same team? That's because they were both working to get their family through hard times. So they both helped their family through hard times. So they were a team. And that is the end of the story, The Babe and I, written by David A. Adler and illustrated by Terry Whittener.